Hello my friends and welcome, my name is Dennis and this is the latest update from Ukraine. We're gonna go to the military update a little later. Now let's go about the crisis, a major one which is starting to happen inside the Russian economy. Plus in the Russian military production sector, so the head of Rostec, Sergei Chemezov. Rostec is the corporation which produces lots of the weaponry for the Russian army, so he warns on Russian economy. He predicts that it will go to stagflation. The stagflation basically means that the money are very expensive. Your business or any sort of the activity on the market just cannot be profitable with the interest rate Russia applied. But the Russian central bank has no other choice than to rise the key rate. Now it has reached 21% and we already see the clashes between the head of the central bank Davydov and the head of the Russian military production Chemezov. Sergei Chemezov even went to the Russian Duma, so the state parliament, and he talked about the major issue with economy that will influence also the production of the Russian weaponry. I took this part of the video from the Max Cuts. I'll put the link for his original video in the video description just below, but the topic is interesting, so I was inspired by his video and I also want to tell you about it. I'll expedite the video, you may read the subtitles in the bottom.
Программы поддержки ограничены как по лимитам, так и по промышленным отраслям. Консервативная финансовая политика может привести к стагфляции. Это термин может быть не всем знаком, он не так часто применяется. Стагфляция – это когда одновременно падает и производство, и потребление.
Stagflation is then both production and consumption are in decline, so it's the crisis inside crisis. You do not have the supply, you do not have the demand. It's actually the destruction of the economy. In his statement, Chemezov said that the Russian central bank applied kind of the strict and conservative measures to regulate everything. And that will lead to stagflation because even for military production, Russia borrows money from the central bank. But with that huge key rate, the Russian economy, which struggles actually under the sanctions, which had lost lots of the markets on the West, which is the resource economy, and we see what is happening with the fuel prices. Yes, with the help of some of the countries like Saudi Arabia, those are going down. The Russian economy just cannot cover its own mortgage. So the key rate even predicted to rise in 2025. In its turn, it will increase the problems inside the Russian economy. There is the high risk for Russia that even its military production will stop. So Chemezov openly accused central bank for the wrongdoing. Let's listen for the response from Davydov.
Резервы рабочей силы и производственных мощностей практически исчерпаны. Нехватка этих ресурсов может привести к ситуации, когда темпы роста экономики будут замедляться, несмотря на все попытки стимулировать спрос, и весь стимул будет уходить в ускорение инфляции. По сути, это сценарий стагфляции. И остановить ее можно будет лишь ценой глубокой рецессии.
Davydov said that the system itself is sick. There is no way out, like positive way out. They're already saying that they're in this stagflation scenario and the only thing to overcome it is the deep recession. So we expect the deep recession in the Russian economy, which may start very soon. Now Russians still have military production. They produce armored vehicles, tanks and so on, but even now they cannot cover their losses. And they've started to pay lots of the funds not just for their military volunteers, but also for those workers who would like to go to the military factories and produce tanks, shells and so on. But for everything of that, the Russian economy and the Russian military borrow money. It is the exponential rise and they print lots of the rubles. The next year Russia has no other choice than to release its ruble, so the rate is expected around 140 rubles per single dollar. And it's just the start of this huge tsunami wave that will hit the Russian economy. My friends, just a short break. If you like the job that I do daily on YouTube, you may also follow me on Patreon. By doing so, you keep me motivated producing more content for you. So I'll put the link for my Patreon page just in the video description below. Thank you so much for your kind support. Here's what is happening with the Russian budget for the next year. The red sector you see are the expenses for the Russian military. It is a record sum of 13.5 trillion rubles, which is roughly 130 billion United States dollars. It is at least 5 times more than Ukraine expected to receive in its military for the next year. But Russia just cannot afford to spend that much with their sick economy, but they are doing it, as you can see, cutting the other Russian economy sectors, social care and so on. It is happening because the Russian ruling FSB clan and Putin personally are looking to solve their main issue, to win in Ukraine no matter what. And you know that the head of the Russian Rostec Corporation is also a former KGB agent. And because of those issues in the Russian economy, we see the open clashes between KGB, so FSB elite, and the Russian Central Bank. As I've told you, Nabiullina tried to leave her position after Russia started the full-scale war against Ukraine and went under the strict sanctions. 2.5 years ago, it was understandable for her personally that it is the end for the Russian economy, so she didn't want to take responsibility for ruling this situation. But Putin didn't want to let her go because she's kind of the talented clerk of his team, who is not actually the part of the team of the FSB elite, but was hired to solve their problems and the problems of the Russian economy. But even she now cannot hold it, and that's why openly she is saying that the destiny of the Russian economy is stagflation and the absolute deep recession. It could be funny to hear that from the Western media sources or from the pro-Ukrainian bloggers, but no, Russians are saying about it themselves. Head of the central bank, the head of the big military corporation are saying that stagflation is imminent. It is one more thing why you shouldn't work for the FSB mafia, because they hire you to solve their problems, but if they see that the problems are unsolvable, they will start to blame you like they blame Nabiullina right now. So not just we have the good news for Ukraine that the Russian economy is in stagflation, but we also have the good news that there is one more crack in the Russian management. Russia is also expected to enter the huge property crisis. This summer, Russia ended subsidized mortgages. The subsidized interest rate was 8%, which is quite high if you speak about the European or American standards. For example, in Germany, the average interest rate for locals is around 1.52%, and also you don't need to pay taxes from those funds. So actually it is quite profitable in a way to enter that program. But for Russia it was 8 and it's been cancelled, so Russians now have to pay the full interest rate. And just imagine paying 21% of the cost of your apartment every year. In 4.5 years, you will pay the price of the same apartment. But people take those mortgages for 30 years, so they should pay the price of 5 apartments, sometimes 6. So who in a sane mind will take this high percent credit to buy an apartment? For this reason, there will be more pictures like that in Russia, where the construction companies will be unable to cover the cost of building the new homes. In its turn, it will cause a significant crisis inside the Russian industry production of metal, cement, and everything connected with apartments. You probably remember the collapse of the Chinese biggest construction corporation, Evergrande Group. Well, despite the attempts of the Chinese government to save the company, it is bankrupt, with a debt of approximately 300 billion United States dollars. 300 billion, it's crazy. China did everything possible to save the market with their large economy compared to Russia, yes. They apply efforts to finish the construction of the buildings. The Chinese National Bank provided its own personal guarantees for the companies who were connected with Evergrande. Again, we are speaking about the production of the steel, concrete, and everything connected with the building of the apartments. The Chinese government also tried to find a common solution between the company and the company's investors to restructure the debt, but the goal wasn't reached fully. So despite all of those efforts of the big Chinese economy, big compared to Russia, still because of the collapse of the Evergrande Group, there are long-term risks for the Chinese entire economy. But in Russia, everything will collapse really, really fast because the Russian economy is not that huge. As I continue to say, this process is just imminent because the Russian elite decided to start a big war in Europe. They not only overestimated their own military by the time they attacked Ukraine on February 24, 2022, with not enough and not trained forces for this big mission, but they also overestimated their own economy. It seems like Russia wasn't ready for the steps they did themselves. And the steps they've done towards their own economy are just crazy. They kept more than 300 billion United States dollars in the Western banks or as the investments in the Western actives. And they didn't do anything with those funds before starting the war, so now they're just frozen. 300 billion is the same cost as the Evergrande Chinese corporation which went bankrupt. So the start of this full-scale war was a big surprise for the Russian economists and also for the head of the Russian Central Bank, Nabiullina. In a single single day they've lost all of those funds and percentage which Russia earned on those. And now we know that Ukraine obtains the profit from the frozen Russian assets to maintain its economy. Well done, Russia, well done. And now you see how Russia pays those crazy funds for the soldiers to join the Russian army. 5,200,000 rubles for the first year of service, from which 30 up to 40% you earn at once, then you sign the contract with the Russian army. If we convert that to the United States dollars, it's 54,000. Crazy money as for the average Russian. For this only reason we see lots of the Russian volunteers willing to join the Russian army. They're coming to those Russian regions where the price for signing the contract with the Russian army is the highest. So you may find those queues in Moscow, in Belgrade, but in the rest of Russia it's not like that. It's already the big business working in Moscow, for example, then people are coming from the other Russian regions, they register in some of the Moscow apartments, they pay their own funds for it to apply for the Russian army as they were from Moscow. But surprise, surprise, then they read the contract, it's not for 1 year, it's till the end of the special military operation. So some of them give up and go home. But you know, money matters, especially in Russia, so the vast part still decides to stay in the Russian army. Because of the short life expectancy of the average Russian soldier, they do not usually obtain those whole funds for a single year of service. Plus, the Russian military avoids to pay some extra funds, for example, for the life loss. If there is no direct evidence of the life loss, they usually write that your husband or your father is lost. Lost, it means not dead, and the family usually doesn't obtain a new Lada. And knowing the harsh reality which goes obviously to the Russian society via telegram channels, via relatives who explain the current situation on the front lines, every day there are less and less Russian volunteers who would like to join the army. The Russian economy is just unable to handle even more salaries. They cannot print rubles forever. It goes to recession, stagflation already. So Russia, after all, is unable to continue this war for many years. But they still may do it for the next 2 years maximum. Then Putin will face two of the major choices. First one is to stop in Ukraine and try to hold the front lines from Ukrainian counterattacks, and the other variant is to go all in to announce a huge mobilization in Russia to destroy its own economy completely by putting it directly to the war rails, and that's how he may try to occupy Ukraine. But even in that case, it will not be the easy way for Russia, so they may destroy their economy for nothing. Well, I think that after all, even the next year Putin will announce a new mobilization in Russia because, as I told you, there are less and less volunteers, less and less people who are willing to join army even with that huge salary, and the Russian economy will not be able to pay those funds. So like the Afghan war, which influenced the Soviet economy, and it was one more reason why the Soviet Union collapsed, the Ukrainian war will be the same for the Russian economy and the Russian regime. I have absolutely no doubts about it, but the problem that those wars usually last for many of the years, like the Soviet-Afghan war, which was there for 10 years. And you know, the Soviet Union was way more powerful than the current Russian Federation. The Soviet Union also had lots of the nukes, more than Russia today, but somehow Soviet Union lost it. That's basically the destiny of the Russian Federation in Ukraine. The main thing for Ukraine is to continue to hold. Putin understands that there are huge problems in the Russian economy, in Russia itself. That's why they go all in to show Ukrainian partners that Russia is winning, and it's better not to supply weapons to Ukraine, because after all, it's just imminent that Russia occupies Ukraine, but it's not like that in real life. I'm sure that Ukraine will still have the support no matter who wins the next elections in the United States, and Ukrainian people in general will resist. Well, for now we see that Russia has the advantage on the front line, again because they go all in. So for the last 24 hours there was the change on the south over here. So yesterday, today, Russia gains lots of the territory after they captured Vuhledar. They propelled quite a lot. And also they propelled from Turkana just a little, so yesterday and today. Here the goal for Russia is to take Kurahovo in those improvised claves. And actually they may do it even this year, so let's check out what it was 1 week ago. So it was like that, and now it's like that. So you see that they're moving really fast. Our soldiers and commanders on the ground are saying that Russians already tried to storm Kurahovo with small motorcycle groups, but they failed with it. We also had reports that Russia castrated the group in Zaporizhia direction. Well, at first it was published that the presence of the Russian group was spotted not far away from Orikhiv, but now we are speaking about Hulai-Poda direction. So Russians may try to attack from this side as well. They are now trying to find the weak spots in Ukrainian defense. And honestly guys, seeing the current situation on Ukrainian front lines, I would say that it's time to finish the Kursk operation to take the most capable forces out from this territory. Yes, in this case Russians might try to go to Sumy. For this reason the Ukrainian armed forces should remain in this territory, and actually it's a good time to build some of the defense of Sumy, defense lines. In every of my videos I continue to tell about the Ukrainian defense lines because it's the major problem of Ukraine. Somehow those were not built in many of the directions, and that led to the Russian propulsion mostly. So again, for the Kursk, I would agree with the Ukrainian General Marchenko, who said that he doesn't know why this operation still continues out there without reaching its main goal. So for now it's better obviously to withdraw the forces, because the perspective for the further assault towards Kurchatov nuclear power plant to cut all those roads, well, it's absent with the current resources Ukraine has. Ukraine has limited resources, and obviously it is better to use them for defense in the east or here in the north somewhere. I think we have just received a new update and we see the Russian army movement in this region again. Well, the only positive move is for Ukrainian small counterattack near Druzhba in Torets direction, so it was yesterday, it's today. But in general, Russia has an absolute advantage, and here in Kurakhov direction I may speak about the collapse, real collapse of the Ukrainian front lines. There are some of the defense lines, but those are not robust. For now, unfortunately, there is the crisis in Ukrainian military management. So to hold on for a long time, and Ukraine absolutely needs that, Ukraine should start the reforms in Ukrainian army, otherwise Russia may occupy vast territories. Alright, now for the good news, we have the result of the presidential elections in Moldova. Our neighbor, the country which is also following the democratic steps. Almost all of the bulletins were protests, so Maia Sandu, the current president of Moldova, gains the lead and wins the elections. Awesome, because Alexander Stoyanoglo is the pro-Russian guy, and Russia did everything for this guy to be victorious. It's reported that Russia used at least 300,000 fake votes in those elections, mainly in the self-proclaimed Transnistria and Gagauz regions. And also they launched the vote carousel in Moldovan embassy of Moscow. Nevertheless, Maia Sandu won the election, so congratulations my Moldovan followers. I asked my mates from Moldova and all of them voted for Sandu. It means that the vector for Moldova development continues to be pro-democratic and pro-European. And I guess that we are all braced for the elections in the United States. They're coming very soon. I'm gonna stream the election night and we're gonna find out live who is the future United States president. Hopefully, if they count those bulletins fast. Whom do you support here? You may write just in the video description below. I do not want to predict the results of the elections because the candidates go very tight, so it will be interesting to know them live here with you on the channel. And now my friends, please don't forget to press your huge like to this video. By doing so you help me a lot, and as usual I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are, and have a great time.